Funding for this video series is generously provided by the University of Idaho Extension's Innovative Project Award. Welcome. This is the second video in the video series on Understanding International Trade, the Basic Ideas. Episode 1, Joe Vandal and the Martians. In this video, we will answer two fundamental but very important questions in international trade. The first one is, why do countries want to trade with each other? And the second question is, how do countries decide what to produce? To explore these questions, let's follow Joe Vandal's adventure in international trade with Martians. If you recall from the first video, NASA confirms there are aliens on Mars in the year 2119. Joe Vandal is the first person to talk to the Martians. From that conversation, Joe learned two things. First, Martians like everything we produce on Earth, from memory chips to potato chips. Second, Joe is better at producing everything than the Martians. In the first video, we asked the question, if Joe is better at producing everything, does Joe really need to import products from Mars? What would happen if Joe only exports? If he sells everything to the Martians, what does he get in return? The Martians don't have any US dollars. They may have their own currency. But Joe doesn't want any Martian currency. What Joe might accept as payment is goods and services from Martians. But the moment Joe gets goods and services from Martians, he is, by definition, importing. Most countries do both import and export. In fact, if a country only exports without imports, it's more like foreign aid. Of course, Joe could choose not to trade with those Martians. This brings us to the first fundamental question in trade. Why do countries want to trade with each other? The short answer is, countries benefit from free trade, meaning the social welfare of a country is at least as high as it would be without trade. This means that, before trade, countries can only consume what they produce. After trade, both countries can consume more than what they produce. Countries selling goods and services to each other almost always generate mutual benefits. However, there are limited resources within a country. So, which country should produce what? To explore this question, we need to introduce two economic concepts, which are called absolute advantage and comparative advantage. What is absolute advantage? Economists would say that an individual has an absolute advantage in producing a single product if they produce it more efficiently or cheaply than another individual. To be better understand this concept, let's take a deeper look at Joe's story and consider how much labor it takes to produce both potato chips and memory chips. As you can see, to produce 1 unit of potato chips, it requires 1 hour of labor for Joe, but 6 hours of labor for the Martians. To produce 1 unit of memory chips, it requires 2 hours of labor for Joe, but 3 hours of labor for Martians. In this case, Joe is better at producing everything than the Martians, because he can produce both products more efficiently or cheaply. Therefore, economists would say that Joe has an absolute advantage in producing both memory chips and potato chips. So, what does it mean? Remember, we said that countries always benefit from free trade. So, having an absolute advantage in producing everything doesn't mean Joe shouldn't trade. But should Joe produce everything and sell them to Martians? Can he improve the benefit in some way? This brings us to the second fundamental question in international trade, that which country should produce what? Let's continue in part 2 of this video. The benefits of free trade do not depend on absolute advantage. Rather, they depend on what is called comparative advantage. Let's go back to Joe's story to see what we mean by comparative advantage. It is a fact that there are only so many hours in a day to work. If Joe wants to produce one more unit of potato chips, he needs to work one more hour. But what happens if Joe is already working full-time producing memory chips, and he doesn't have an extra hour that he can work to produce one more unit of potato chips each day? The only solution is for Joe to spend less time on producing memory chips. Here we need to introduce another term which is called opportunity cost. In general, the opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain when we choose one alternative over another. In Joe's story, to produce one more unit of potato chips, how many memory chips will Joe have to give up? Well, producing one unit of potato chips requires 1 hour of work. 1 hour of work allows Joe to produce half a memory chip. So we would say Joe's opportunity cost of producing one more potato chip is half a memory chip. Similarly, we can find that for Martians, if they want to produce one more unit of potato chips, they need 6 more hours. But those 6 hours would allow them to produce 2 more memory chips. So we say Martians' opportunity cost of producing one more potato chip is 2 memory chips. So, what does it all mean? It means that Joe must give up less memory chips than Martians in order to produce one more potato chip. So we say, compared to Martians, Joe's opportunity cost of producing potato chip is lower. This is the same as saying Joe has a comparative advantage in producing potato chips. Here's a knowledge check. Take a moment and follow the same steps and determine who has the comparative advantage in producing memory chips. Let's go back to the question, based on comparative advantage, who should produce what? Economists find that both Joe and Martians will be better off if they produce only one thing, according to their comparative advantage. If Joe produces only potato chips, and the Martians produce only memory chips, of course, it would make sense that they trade with each other in exchange for what they don't produce anymore. So, why would this trade strategy work? The answer is that although Joe is better at producing both potato chips and memory chips, he is even better at producing potato chips. In contrast, although the Martians are worse at producing both potato chips and memory chips, they are much worse potato chips producers. Trade allows both Earth and Mars to do what they are most efficient at doing. You may wonder, how will Joe and the Martians make the trade deal? What determines the potato chip to memory chip exchange rate between Joe and Martians? We will talk about that briefly in the next video, World Demand and World Supply. Thank you for watching this video. We look forward to you joining us for the next video in this series, and hope that you will find this as a benefit personally and potentially in helping your business.